All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melon heads of the world. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Today's May 7th, 2025. Happy Fed Day, by the way. Today's the FOMC. Not really the big story this morning, though, because I don't expect the FOMC to do anything. It's going to be a bunch of silly political talking points. The press will be fishing for anything and anything they can use to beat over Donald Trump's head. Maybe they say something about what their plans will be later this year. But for the time being, I'm expecting no action from the Fed today. So barring some unexpected talking point from Powell, I think it's going to be a relative non-event. Now, that being said, the big story this morning is we're talking about talking, or establishing a cautiously optimistic roadmap to a framework to hopefully someday maybe not hating each other quite as much and maybe eventually even a trade deal. At least that's what the headline is. Secretary Scott Bessent and Jamieson Greer, who's the U.S. trade rep for China, will be meeting with their Chinese counterparts over the weekend in Switzerland. This is being viewed as a de-escalation, or at least it is a attempted de-escalation at the trade war and its rhetoric that's going on. I don't think we're going to walk away from this meeting with a deal. Actually, I think there's like a 0% chance we walk away from this meeting with a deal. The question is, can they sit down in the room and say some things without any blustering, arguing, or just walking away from everything being even worse? Remember that whole blow up in the Oval Office between Trump, Vance, and Zelensky? As long as we don't get that, I think the meeting will be viewed as a positive outcome, regardless of what is said. That being said, it's 50-50 that we end up with that, with a replay of the Vance Oval Office interview. And in fact, that may be the entire goal of this meeting for either side. They may have set the meeting just so they can go in and pretend to be hard and say some outrageous thing, and everybody gets up in a tiff and walks away, and then markets would just freak out if that happened. So for now, the market is optimistic. I would say cautiously optimistic about the outcome here. But keep in mind the prospects for a blow up here. I mean, I wouldn't put it past either side to do this. Let's just put it that way. But at the very least, we're talking about talking. It's a step in the right direction with an asterisk next to it. Meanwhile, China is still entrenching economically, if you will. They're at the table now, or they're talking about going to the table, but they're still digging in at the same time. We had various rate cuts and other stimulus measures announced by the PBOC and the other various Chinese financial regulators last night. They are cutting their reverse repo rates. They're cutting their reserve requirement ratio. The PBC's lending rate is being cut. Also, certain rates for housing loans are being cut. So all kinds of stimulus measures to support the economy, which is totally a number one strong. Nothing to see here. China has no weakness, right? That's the messaging. Okay, you wouldn't be cutting your rates if that was the case. All right, so that's on the U.S.-China front. We've also got more geopolitical tensions. Another regional hot war erupted yesterday. India attacked Pakistan. They struck 9 different targets in Pakistan via air. Now, India is describing these as non-escalatory, as a restrained response to the terrorist attacks in Kashmir that killed 26 civilians a few weeks ago. Pakistan is saying they reserve the right to retaliate. Now, okay, so the shots were fired. We knew the shots were going to be fired. It seems like things could be worse than they are. I mean, we're talking about 2 nuclear powers here, so any shooting is bad. That being said, the rhetoric was immediately de-escalatory on both sides. So that's a little bit encouraging here. We knew something was going to happen. There's been some other artillery shelling along the border. That's largely expected. Pakistan has been claiming they shot down several Indian jets. Be careful with the information on this one, especially if you guys are like following any of this stuff that's going on Twitter. There is a lot of BS around this campaign going on. I saw some prominent Pakistani Twitter account posting 4 or 5-year-old pictures of crashed Indian Air Force jets claiming that they were shot down by Pakistan. Before you repost a picture or anything like that, run it through Tin Eyes. Just do one of those Google reverse image searches and see what happens. There's just a lot of there's a lot of BS flying around, a lot of stupid propaganda. Be careful what you believe. Meanwhile, on the trade war front, again, the EU is, we talked yesterday about how the European Union was considering retaliatory tariffs on $100 billion of U.S. goods if trade talks didn't go well. We got confirmation this morning that Boeing jets are among that $100 billion of goods that would be targeted. I think it was 100 billion euros of goods would be targeted. Not too surprising there. Boeing jets, food, agricultural exports are the obvious targets. The only other thing Europe imports a lot of is U.S. liquefied natural gas, and they can't really afford to put tariffs on U.S. LNG because, well, they can't keep their lights on. So somewhat weak sauce from the EU, but at the same time, the EU, like they're talking about talking, just in case the talks don't go well. We have this thing that we're ready to do. Don't make me have to do it. And meanwhile, President Trump is over here saying, don't make me rename another Gulf. Oh, yeah, they're doing that again. Wait till you see that story. That's kind of funny. Also going on, we got Supermicro, a company that I just love. I think these guys are really great. Just kidding. They're a bunch of crooks and frauds. Supermicro missed earnings. They lowered their guidance again just a few days after they lowered their guidance last time, saying some customers have delayed making platform decisions. That's interesting. I thought demand for Blackwell was insane and these things were selling off the hook. And this was the first quarter that Blackwell was available. But people are delaying decisions. Is that a funny way of saying people aren't yet buying Blackwell? I thought the demand was insane. All that stuff. Well, maybe some tariff impact too. Supermicro stock heading sharply lower this morning. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of guys. And OpenAI, we got big news from OpenAI yesterday. They have abandoned their plans to transition to a for-profit company. And some of you may be surprised to learn, Jack says this with a straight face, this is true, OpenAI is a charity. No, really, it is. It's charity. Just, okay, moving right past that, OpenAI is going to stay a charity. OpenAI has been planning to transition to a for-profit business, as if they're not right now. There's some very lucrative charity work Sam Altman is doing personally there. Very good for his personal finances. I didn't think charity worked that way. I've done some charity work, and I never became a billionaire doing it. Just saying. They're going to stay that way. Now, the interesting thing here is OpenAI has done some very big funding rounds recently. Notably, they were going to raise $30 billion from SoftBank. All of these big multi-billion-dollar capital raises that OpenAI needs to survive because this company burns money like a drunken sailor, they were all contingent upon OpenAI successfully transitioning to a for-profit company. And now OpenAI is not going to do that. So there is a big fat question mark next to all those many billions OpenAI was going to raise, which may raise questions about the company's finances. And, well, how are they going to pay for that, say, $11.9 billion deal they just signed with CoreWeave to rent data centers? OpenAI does not have $11.9 billion. And if that funding doesn't go through, they won't have $11.9 billion. Market's just kind of glossing over that one this morning. We also got Disney earnings came out this morning. They were pretty good here. Disney stock is up significantly here. Disney added a lot of subscribers to their Disney Plus streaming platform, and their theme parks division doing very well. That's interesting because we've heard a lot about tourism being down in the U.S. because of Orange Man Bad, because of the trade talks, not affecting Disney. And, well, Disney is your quintessential tourist destination, right? When you hear tourism, most people automatically think Disney World. Well, I suspect people plan Disney World vacations years in advance, right? And I don't think somebody, say hypothetically, a Canadian is going to cancel a trip to Disney World that they paid for and planned 2 years ago just because Donald Trump said a thing. Maybe it will cause people to not make those plans in the future. But for now, because these Disney vacations are so far in advance, it's not having any impact on Disney's bottom line. That doesn't mean it won't eventually. Just means for now, Disney is okay. And Palantir got clobbered yesterday. 12% drop in the stock yesterday off of disappointing news in their international revenues. It seems European countries aren't paying Palantir for whatever the heck Palantir does. I don't think anybody really knows. Look, Palantir, even after a 12% decline, it's still trading at something like 450 times earnings. It's just a date with reality for a company that was long overdue. The valuations on these companies will eventually matter. Yesterday was one of those days for Palantir. We got a lot to talk about this morning, guys. Why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in these markets. And this is when I would typically ask you to kindly smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. And if you guys are new here, won't you please subscribe and come on back tomorrow and have your coffee with the melon heads, because we do this one every single day. And right now, the S&P 500 is clinging to gains. It's up only 9 points. Yeah, the sell-off started around 7:20 a.m. this morning. We started giving up those gains. The market was up a few hundred points, or I should say the S&P was up about 100 points, giving back almost all of that. The optimism about these weekend trade talks appears to be fading here. The Dow, meanwhile, is still up 128 points, about 1/3 of 1%. But again, starting around 7:20 this morning, we saw that start to sell off. And the NASDAQ just barely positive, 10 points to the upside, 0.05%. So stocks for now clinging to those gains, hence the bull icon. Meanwhile, the U.S. dollar is a little bit stronger this morning, 99.45. That's up by 18 basis points. I went through a lot of the Asian currencies this morning, the yen, the Taiwan dollar, the Hong Kong dollar, the Korean won. It appears that the mayhem in Asian currencies, the rapid strengthening of those Asian currencies, has at least stopped for now. It's actually reversed a little bit. It hasn't given back all of its gains. But for now, whatever that de-dollarization hysteria in Asia was over the last couple of days, that has subsided for the time being. Looking over at the bond market, we've got a mixed bag this morning. The 30-year Treasury, 4.791. That's lower by about 2.5 basis points. The 10-year Treasury is lower by a 0.2, 4.306% for the 10-year Treasury. So we got a little bit of buying on the long end of the yield curve, sending those yields lower. On the 2-year, we're at 3.803. That's actually higher by a 1.5. And the 1 month is at 4.299, a fraction of a point lower. Looking over at the commodities board, we got a lot of red this morning here. Gold down by about $42. That's after gold rallied more than $100 yesterday. We had $200 day moves in a row for gold, giving back some of those gains here. $3,388 for spot gold. That's lower by 1.2%. Silver, meanwhile, also selling off this morning, $32.75 for spot silver. That's off by 46 cents or 1.4% lower, but I still like the shiny. Copper's lower by 2.2%. Platinum, 0.25% lower. Palladium's 0.75% higher. And WTI crude oil is off by about a dime here. $59 flat for West Texas Intermediate June futures. Looking over at Bitcoin, we are a little bit higher this morning. We had a pretty good day yesterday for Bitcoin, rallied more than $1,000. At one point this morning, we were over 97,000. We're actually as high as about 97.7 this morning. Now we're back to 96,845, just modestly higher from yesterday. And I just wanted to show you guys the long-term gold chart here. We're looking at daily candles. Just want to point out, good couple of days here. There's those $200 up days in a row, something similar to what we saw here. Now we're kind of back at this resistance level and we're selling off a little bit. I apologize for my sloppy squiggles here. But the level to watch is that 34, we'll say 34.30. That's the level we want to see a breakout above. If we see a move above that and more importantly, a close above that, then it looks like we are onward and upward to yet new highs for gold. Now let's talk about the trade war this morning. Trump officials Bessent and Greer to meet with their Chinese counterparts on trade and economic issues. Hey, at least we're talking, right? It's a modicum of progress, but it is progress nonetheless. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer will meet with their Chinese counterparts in Switzerland this weekend to discuss economic and trade matters. Their offices announced Tuesday. We have shared interests, Bessent said later on Fox News. The current tariff war isn't sustainable, said Bessent, especially on the Chinese side. And 145% tariffs, 125% is the equivalent of an embargo. Gee, you think? We don't want to decouple. What we want is fair trade. Bessent and Greer will meet with their Chinese counterparts on both Saturday and Sunday, the Treasury Secretary said. The meetings appear to be a major step toward Washington and Beijing beginning negotiations to potentially resolve the ongoing trade war ignited by President Trump. My sense is that this will be about de-escalation, not about the big trade deal, Besson told host Laura Ingraham, but we've got to de-escalate before we can move forward. So sounds like Besson is optimistic, but at the same time, he's tempering that enthusiasm. Let's not expect any big breakthroughs here. A de-escalation would be a victory. Take the W. But again, there's the possibility that this just turns into another debacle. So keep that in mind. Meanwhile, China continues to batten down the hatches economically. China's central bank cuts key interest rate amid threat from U.S. tariffs. This one is in Market Watch. This is from yesterday, late yesterday. China has announced a barrage of measures meant to counter the blow to its economy from U.S. President Trump's trade war as the two sides prepare for talks later this week. Beijing's central bank governor and other top financial officials outlined plans to cut interest rates and reduce bank reserve requirements to help free up more funding for lending. They also said the government would increase the amount of money available for factory upgrades and other innovation and for elder care and other service businesses. Here are some of the moves. Among the support announced by China on Wednesday, the People's Bank of China's Governor Pan Gongsheng said China's reverse repo rate, or the rate on commercial bank deposits with the central bank, was reduced to 1.4% from 1.5%. The PBOC's lending rate to commercial banks was cut by 0.25% to 1.5%. The required reserve ratio, or portion of funds banks must hold in their reserves, was cut by 0.5%. Pan said that would free up roughly 1 trillion yuan, or about $137 billion in extra cash. And the central bank also reduced interest rates on 5-year housing loans. I don't think that's going to be much help to the Chinese housing market. But you can see here a little bit of stimmies, a little bit of lower rates here. No big fire hose of liquidity here. No big $1 trillion packages announced or anything like that. Again, these small measures, but a series of them. China continues to try to bolster their economy while, at the very least, we are now beginning to talk. All right, elsewhere in Asia, Pakistan signals potential retaliation after India's airstrike. Emphasis on potential retaliation. It's not automatic, at the very least. Again, are they talking? I don't know if they're talking, but they're kind of talking via media, sending signals here. Pakistan said it reserves the right to retaliate after India launched targeted strikes, signaling a potential further escalation in hostilities between the nuclear-armed rivals following last month's deadly Kashmir attacks. Just hours after India hit 9 targets in its neighbor, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif's office said in a statement that the country reserves the right to respond in self-defense at a time, place, and manner of its choosing. Does anybody else think that this is Pakistan actually signaling that they're not going to retaliate? That's kind of what I'm taking away from this here. The armed forces of Pakistan have been duly authorized to undertake corresponding actions, said the statement issued after the National Security Committee meeting. Islamabad's response is likely to intensify tensions in the region that is already unsettled by the April 22nd military attacks in India that killed 27 civilians. India said in a statement early Wednesday that it conducted a precise and restrained response that was designed to be non-escalatory in nature. The strikes were the deepest breach of Pakistani territory since the 1971 war. New Delhi said it only targeted known terror camps and hit no Pakistani civilian, economic, or military targets. Pakistan's army said 26 civilians were killed in the strikes. Pakistan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs called the move an act of war. Well, yes, it was an act of war. That's exactly what war is bombing and killing people. That being said, honestly, I think the rhetoric is kind of intentionally soft here. So maybe there's hope this doesn't spiral out of control. Remember, these are nuclear powers. And I just want to send a shout out to OSINT Technical on Twitter here. This is one of those open source Intel channels. These guys have been really good for the last couple of years. And he's kind of venting here, saying the India-Pakistan information environment descending directly into the most wildly false and unsourced claims is disappointing, but expected. Guys, there's prominent Indian and Pakistani social media accounts that are posting footage from freaking video games claiming it's showing India and Pakistan shooting at each other. I saw this one guy yesterday was posting 5-year-old pictures of crashed Indian military jets, claiming it was pictures of Indian jets that were shot down by Pakistan's air defenses. These are easily proven false claims. don't be lazy, guys. Before you retweet this crap, at least do a little bit of checking on your own. The community notes people have been pretty good, but it's a whack-a-mole approach. They can't keep up with the just deluge of outright fake information that's circulating around this conflict. And one thing I saw this morning that also was kind of funny, I couldn't help but mention this one. This is in Terror Alarm on Twitter. Trump plans to announce the U.S. will officially rename the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Gulf during his Middle East tour, White House officials confirm. I haven't been able to confirm this story, and maybe this is another rumor, like see also what I earlier said about be careful what you repost. That being said, this fits with all of the geopolitical activities that have been going on. And if you're wondering what the hell does this even mean, renaming the Persian Gulf from the Arabian Gulf, that is an overture to the Saudis and an insult to the Iranians. And, well, this is in line with the rather childish and petty conduct of this administration. Let's just say it, guys. Conduct unbecoming is kind of their calling card here. That being said, this is kind of hilarious, all right? I mean, like, President Trump is playing geopolitical hardball here. It's like, don't make me rename another Gulf. I'll do it, I swear. I've got a Gulf here, and I'll change the name on all my maps. So, yeah, that's going on. Another thing that just kind of makes me think there's going to be a deal with the Saudis at some point. Between that and all the additional oil that started flowing recently, which Trump wanted the Saudis to do, something tells me we are going to get a deal with the Saudis. One thing also going on the trade war front, EU considers tariffs on Boeing jets. Financial Times is reporting. Not going to go too much into detail on this one because we talked about that 100 billion euros that Europe was targeting just in case the trade talks don't go well. Well, it looks like Boeing jets is on that list this morning. Now, this isn't being done yet. This is a list that the European officials are preparing that they're going to do if they don't get a deal. The EU has not directly retaliated yet. They're just saying we could retaliate, and if we do, Boeing is the obvious target. Not earth-shattering news, but worth mentioning. And this one, I just love to talk about this one. Supermicro outlook disappoints, and the stock drops. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of guys. SMCI stock was falling early Wednesday after the server maker provided disappointing fourth quarter guidance. Supermicro said it expects fourth quarter adjusted earnings to be between 40 and 50 cents a share, which is well below Wall Street estimates of 66 cents a share. Revenue for the June quarter is expected to be $5.6 to $6.4 billion, also below estimates of $6.65 billion. Supermicro also said they expect their 2025 revenue to be $21.8 to $22.6 billion. That is another cut from their prior estimates of $23.5 to $25 billion. And before that, I believe it was 24 to 28 billion was like a month ago. This is the second time they've cut their estimates in a couple of weeks here. Some customers delayed making platform decisions in the quarter, said CEO Charles Lang in the earnings release. He added that he expects commitments to land in the June to September quarters, but economic uncertainty and tariff impacts may have a short-term impact. We still don't really know what those semiconductor tariffs are going to look like here. Look, this is the second time Supermicro has cut their guidance recently. You guys know my thoughts on this company. I've been following this one pretty closely for the last couple of years. These guys are outright frauds and crooks. They have a history of accounting fraud. They rehired all the people they fired after their last accounting fraud. I think they are one of the sleaziest companies on Wall Street. And, well, the stock is being appropriately sold off this morning, $31.05. That's down about $5.71. Only $31 to go on this one. And also in the AI mania front here, we've got OpenAI abandoned planned for-profit conversion. So it appears Sam Altman's charity work will continue for the time being here. OpenAI abandoned a controversial effort to place its juggernaut AI business under control of a for-profit entity and will instead remain under its founding nonprofit board. That's right, folks. OpenAI is a charity. Gag me. The move could complicate the company's future fundraising efforts, unlike traditional boards, which must act in the best interest of shareholders. OpenAI's nonprofit board has a fiduciary duty to humanity. That's funny. So that's why they're stealing IP from literally anyone who has ever lived, ripping off the life's work of artists and journalists. They're doing it for humanity, not for billions and billions of dollars, which they've already put in their pockets. Wow, here it seems like they're a bunch of nice guys, aren't they? OpenAI started work on the change to its business structure after CEO Sam Altman's surprise firing and reinstatement in 2023. I would mention here, during its fundraising efforts over the past year, OpenAI has dangled the promise of its imminent conversion to a more traditional structure to entice investments. The terms of its fundraising from some investors required OpenAI to successfully restructure in order to receive the full amount raised. That includes their deal with SoftBank recently, but Altman said the changes proposed on Monday would still allow it to access a $30 billion chunk of investment from SoftBank, which had been dependent upon the successful restructuring. A representative for SoftBank didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. So Sam Altman says a thing, even though the paperwork that both companies signed says something otherwise. Gee, you reckon maybe Sam Altman might be a liar? I don't know. I'll just throw it out there. But this could impact the AI mania, guys. OpenAI, without these fundraising, without these funds that they're raising, has no money to pay for their data center rentals. And OpenAI is the biggest single renter of data centers. So with that goes Microsoft's CapEx, CoreWeave's revenue, all the other companies that they've round-tripped and invested in too. This could echo throughout the AI mania. We still don't know. The market did not react at all to this one yesterday, but I would point out that $11.9 billion deal that CoreWeave signed with OpenAI in order to try to salvage their IPO. Well, OpenAI does not have the money to pay for that without that funding from SoftBank. So watch for headlines about SoftBank and OpenAI in the days ahead. We've also got Disney reports significant beat on revenue and earnings, but sees uncertainty ahead. We're going to go pretty fast here because we're getting short on time. Look, Disney, they had two good movies in the last quarter, and they had two bombs. They kind of offset each other. So movies was a push for this quarter. Theme parks did very well, and streaming did very well. So Disney has been raising the prices on all of their streaming platforms. They're still growing users, so it appears the price hikes have not caused any big waves of cancellations. And on top of that, theme parks are doing well. Year-over-year increases in theme parks. They're saying here a 13% rise in theme parks, in fact. So all of these headlines about tourism being hurt by the trade war, not impacting Disney, which is the single biggest tourist destination in the world. But again, guys, I think probably a delayed impact there. Disney vacations take years to plan. They're always paid well in advance. So people aren't going to cancel vacations that they've already paid for just because a politician said a thing. So it may affect future plans for Disney vacations, but for now, it is not. Disney stock doing really well here this morning, up 9.5%, trading at $100.99. Big move for Disney. Also, big moves that happened recently. Palantir had a big one. Hold on a second. Let me get to the headline here. Palantir stock slides after earnings spotlight international weakness and irrational valuation. And that's pretty much the whole story here. I mean, Palantir reported decent numbers. There was a little bit of a decline in their international business for whatever reason. This article didn't go into a lot of detail on why that might be happening. It was only a small decline. But look here, when you're talking about the stock, first of all, it was down 12% yesterday. It's flat right now. But I just want to point to the PE ratio here. I don't know how accurate this is. I've heard of PEs in the hundreds. Maybe that's the forward PE was in the 100, but they're saying 473 times earnings. Come on, guys. This is just not realistic. This company was doomed at some point to revalue. Look at the year they've had. I mean, Palantir, even after yesterday's 12% decline, it's still up 331% over the last year. So it's just victim of their own success or victim of markets' irrational exuberance, whatever you want to call it, guys. This one, not too surprising. And I just want to say thank you very much to Pigo's Trading Desk. Thank you, Pigo, for supporting the channel. He says, Win pausing refurbishment because of tariffs. I did see that one. Shout out to my moderator, Mish, who also caught that one this morning. It just didn't make the cut. There was a lot of news this morning. Wynn announced a pretty high profile. They're canceling refurbishment of one of their big Las Vegas strip hotel and casinos. Not surprising. I've seen some really bad numbers around Las Vegas recently. As much as Disney is somewhat immune to whatever's going on with tourism in the trade war, it is It's not affecting Disney. It definitely is affecting Las Vegas. And Wynn pausing that refurbishment is symptomatic of that decline. Thank you, Pigo, for pointing that one out and for supporting the channel, sir. And Nashville Pasta Man says Altman is an effective altruism advocate like SBF. That's right, effective altruism, the duty of billionaires to maximize their charitable work such that they achieve the maximum impact of good on humanity. And that's why Sam Bankman-Fried stole, what, $30 billion? He was just trying to maximize the good. Remember the headlines, the world's most generous billionaire? Oh, yeah, that was Sam Bankman-Fried. And Sam Altman is also an effective altruist. So, I mean, hey, an effective altruist named Sam, what's the worst thing that could happen? Don't answer that. Gag me with that. Sam Altman has become insanely wealthy from his charity work. Charity work, emphasis charity, is not supposed to make the person doing it insanely wealthy. That's not how charity works. Just saying. Nothing wrong with paid employees at a charity so long as they are paid a fair wage at market rate, you know, that kind of thing, like they are performing a service, they deserve to be compensated for it. But holy crap, how much money has Sam Altman made? How many billions has that guy put in his pocket? And not for nothing, Sam Altman is a degenerate scumbag. Sorry, there I said it. There's more than enough negative headlines about him and that creepy-ass thing he did with Scarlett Johansson, not to mention all the other rumors, which I don't want to repeat, but let's just say this guy's got some skeletons in his closet. But, oh, he's an effective altruism advocate. Yeah, doing a lot of good there. Keep up the good work, Sam. His charity work will continue. All right, guys, I want to say thank you so much for the super chats, and thank you for supporting the channel and for having your coffee with the Melonheads this morning. Thanks, Pigo and Pasta Man, for supporting the channel. Thank you to you, magnanimous Melonheads on Patreon and YouTube as well. Links down below, should you feel so inclined. Don't forget that like button and that subscribe button on the way out for the algorithm. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. Everyone, till next time, live small and dream big.